Hello there, kia ora. It looks like the cracks are starting to show in the coalition, created through actions of their own doing and an inability to recognise that. Part of this was actually highlighted on Monday by a stunt that David Seymour tried to pull, driving an 80-year-old Land Rover up the steps of Parliament for a charity event, recreating a drive that the vehicle made in 1948 and being stopped by security with a simple message. The Speaker says no. The Speaker of the House is in charge of what happens on Parliament grounds, whether that's giving permission for someone to get married there, protests on the site, or blasting music at illegal occupiers, and if a politician is allowed to drive up the ceremonial stairs. And the office of the Speaker said no. Now, Seymour defended his actions, and the Prime Minister called it a political sideshow that he has no interest in. After a week of Seymour induced political sideshows, almost like a whole bunch of distracting things, distracting the public from something which hasn't really made the news as much as a former MP doing her groceries, including the revelation that Seymour wrote a letter of support for murder-accused Philip Polkinghorne, which the Prime Minister on Monday also called ill-advised. And these all came to a head on Monday when two polls were released, showing some bad news for the coalition government. Now, I've said many times before that polls are more about trends, but much better for ratings if taken in isolation, and there is something to be said for matching methodologies from poll to poll as well. And these two polls, well, they both showed the same trend that we've actually seen from every other poll released this year. That continued the trend that we started to see at the end of last year. The coalition is losing support. In fact, for one partner, it's on the verge of not making it back into Parliament. Now, there are some other fascinating little trends in it, like the ACT-aligned taxpayer union Curia polls are the only ones that have ACT support level in double-digit figures. Both Talbot Mills and Varian have New Zealand First on the cusp of dropping below that 5% MMP threshold. 3 of the 4 polls done this year have Te Pāti Māori at close to 6%, and every single one of them has National and Labour neck and neck. And both polls out today, even though the numbers for the support parties differ, have the coalition out on its ear and a left-leaning bloc in power. The 2 polls released today were also done at slightly different times. The Curia poll was done before Waitangi Day, the Varian poll was done before, during, and after, and Seymour's antics and Luxon's lack of appearance will have made an impact on these. And we know the Prime Minister knows this because he said so himself. In the post-cabinet briefing on Monday, he said that their internal polling numbers are showing similar results. His reaction? To blame Labour and claim credit for tax relief that didn't offset the rising costs we all face every day, or claim credit for interest rates and inflation drops, which were engineered by Treasury when COVID hit. But now they don't have that safety rail against using unemployment as a tool for bringing it down, which National removed as literally the first thing that they did when they got into Parliament, and has partly been behind the fastest levels of unemployment rises we've seen since the John Key era. But even in the midst of the John Key era, National still commanded massive support, and John Key was still an incredibly, weirdly popular Prime Minister. Luxon has never enjoyed that support that Key had, and has always struggled to connect with ordinary New Zealanders. And now, New Zealanders are feeling the pinch, feeling the country is going in the wrong direction, feeling like the focus has not been on dealing with issues important to them, which the polls indicate is the cost of living, which keeps rising, the economy, which is in the midst of the worst recession since 1991, health, which today announced the loss of over 1,000 IT staff members whose jobs are to ensure our digital infrastructure is maintained and accessible, and I'm sure nothing could possibly ever go wrong without that particular infrastructure being looked after properly. Race relations, which are being used by right-wing parties at the moment in particular to stir people up and causing division, which can actually be seen and measured as being exacerbated since the introduction of the Treaty Principles Bill, and unemployment, which is at the worst level it's been since the height of the pandemic. All of this is a pressure cooker for the government, and one which is clearly causing some cracks. It seems our wealthy and sorted Prime Minister was hoping that we'd be talking about other things, like the way they're going to supercharge the economy for the super rich by letting them stay in the country a week a year to be able to get citizenship so that they can invest here, or that there's a special summit for high-profile business leaders and investors heading our way in March. But he gets hounded on the stunts of his coalition partners, and their stunts and stances are clearly pissing off voters, and losing those parties' support, which is dragging down the entire coalition's chance of being re-elected. Because the majority of us want a working government looking out for us instead of taking pot shots at comedians for asking hard questions lots of people wonder why journalists aren't asking, or fighting against woke banks. And he can't do a thing about it, because there is always the very real risk of one of the partners walking away if they don't get what they want, forcing an early election or making this a lame duck minority government. They have Luxon over a barrel, and he looks like a weak, ineffective leader because of it, whose decisions have made life harder for the average New Zealander. It's a spiral that they caused that leads to what we're seeing happen over and over, which has led to tanking poll numbers, which adds to the pressure cooker that they're in. So it's no wonder that there's cracks showing. Something going to blow is pretty imminent at the moment. And when it comes to getting things back on track, well, when steam trains blow up, it ends up badly for anybody nearby. Hey, thanks for checking out today's video. Make sure you like, share, subscribe so you get more updates as we go along. We deal with these guys for the rest of the year.